Hello, and welcome to The Balancing Act, the show that dives into real stories of people I admire who are balancing the challenges of navigating a high level career while raising a family. I'm your host, Sarah Sheridan, Director of Sales and Executive Recruiting at Hirewell, and mom to three little ones. Super excited to welcome our guest today, Margot Nash. Margot and I got to work together back at the Mom Project, and since then, she has co founded and is CEO of MindMetrix and has two little ones. Margot, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Thank you for being here. I know we just caught up and it had been a while. It didn't feel like it, but I feel like a lot of life has happened.
Yep.
You
A
had your
lot.
second kid. You founded a company. I had two more.
Yes, it almost feels like a lifetime since then, although it has not been that long ago.
Right, right. Yeah, things have been happening, which is good.
Yes.
Well, Margot, just to kick things off, would love to just do a quick intro. If you can tell us a little bit more about yourself, your career journey, the company you just launched, and then your family life.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there. I am, as you said, most importantly, a mom of two little ones. So I have a 8-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. And
Share their names because I love them.
Yep. So my son Levi and my daughter Carmen, they are wonderful. They are wild, and it's a time in mornings lately. I am the lucky to be in a job that I love. I am the CEO of a company called MindMetrix, which is a mental health assessment company, which I can tell you a little bit about. But I think my career path has been one that's maybe a little bit less traditional. I don't know if we've ever talked about kind of how I got started, but
No, I'm
I
excited.
so so I'll get into that, and I know we're going to talk about, balancing, kind of this wild time really in my children's lives with a career, but lots to talk about there. But to start, I actually got into the world of mental health in kind of a roundabout way. I've always been like really drawn to careers and jobs where I'm kind of working to get a better understanding of people. And I've
Mhm.
always been really fascinated by people and assessments, and probably if I kind of like really reflect on it, it's probably an attempt to get a better understanding of myself. I think everybody kind of has that desire, but I actually started out in selling makeup at Estée Lauder, and I got a personality assessment. So they did kind of like a team strengths finders kind of thing. And that got me into this like world of, okay, how can I, you know, if you can use a tool to kind of better understand yourself and understand the people around you. That got me into organizational psychology, which ultimately led me to technology and building tools that helped companies identify talent. And that took me through a series of startups and launching products around helping kind of identify fit for certain roles, and then ultimately led me into the corporate world, which got me to realize that I really wanted to start my own thing.
Awesome. Awesome. So you've been kind of on the product side of the house and a leader in that space when you were
Exactly.
corporate.
Exactly. So I led the product team at the Mom Project, and also led product teams at a company called Hirology, and was also at Grubhub for a period of time.
Okay, awesome. I love that. And I love the makeup foundation too. I did not know that.
Yes, I really credit my my kind of roundabout journey to eyeshadow.
Love it. Love it. Well, awesome. Thank you for that intro. And I know it's hard to condense an entire life into like a 2-minute spiel. So let's talk more about your current company. It sounds like being in the like startup world, you kind of always realize you may want to go out on your own. So I feel like a lot of women, especially working moms, we're kind of seeing a trend of them leaving corporate,
Yep.
doing consulting or launching their own company. So can you kind of walk us through, like, once you realize I'm gonna launch this company, what were kind of the first steps you took to make that happen?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think I say this kind of half jokingly, but therapy, I think that's a really good first step. So,
Yeah.
frankly, I think that was what, I'm a really big believer, obviously, in the mental health space. And I think that getting, a great understanding of kind of where you're coming from and what your needs are is ultimately like what helped me realize that I needed to kind of do something on my own. I needed that flexibility in my life. I needed to kind of have control not only of my day, but also of like the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
And I think I was at a period of time where I felt like I was actually trying to have Carmen, and we went through, several setbacks in that process and had some losses along the way. And it was like a real journey. And I think probably losing control in that area of my life contributed to me feeling like I wanted to have more control at work. And so ultimately, through the therapeutic process, probably realized that, having much more of a say in my day and the things that I'm working on was really, really important. But then in terms of like actually getting started, is that
Well,
kind
I love you sharing that because I feel like it's not really talked about, but there is so much that goes on in family planning and losses and all of that on top of being in like a pretty high pressure corporate career where you kind of sometimes feel like you have to hide that. So it's refreshing to kind of hear that that was a big part of like what motivated you to kind of go out on your own.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a weird thing that so many people go through and like people don't talk about, either because it's not, acceptable to talk about
Yeah.
in certain environments, or because, there's like a lot of shame and kind of stigma, I think, still, associated with having, challenges with infertility and things like that. But I'm a real big believer in kind of sharing these challenges, and that kind of what you bring to light helps other people feel a little bit more normal in their situation. And so I definitely think companies today are getting better, I think, about supporting parents through
Hmm.
that kind of scenario. And I was fortunate to be in a place that probably would have been supportive, but I still, even amidst that, felt like very ready to be on my own and, kind of seeing what I could do, creating my own circumstances.
For sure, for sure. So then once you like had that idea, you're like, I'm doing this, husband's on board. What would you say were like a couple of the first major steps you took to kind of get this thing launched?
Yeah, yeah. So I will say I can't take full credit for like having the idea. I steps for getting, a business launched, I will get to. I actually was like really, really fortunate to be connected with Dr. Young, who is a psychiatrist out of Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Okay.
And he has a large practice, and I got to chatting with him about what he sees every day in practice. And he told me, he was like, Margot, it's unbelievable. About half of the people who come in to see me, about half of my patients have been misdiagnosed before they get here. And they're struggling, about half,
Well,
which is wild. And that was like shocking to me and like really eye-opening. And he said, for the most part, people have been struggling for a really long time. And part of that could be that, he's built a center that's kind of known at this point for being the place that you go when, you're kind of like at the end of the line, like you need to figure out what's going on. I shouldn't say
mhm.
that. They have a wide range of patients there, but they do have this reputation for kind of like really being precise with diagnostics.
Mhm.
And so he told me this, and it was like, oh my God, that's really wild. And so what are you doing to do things differently? And he said he's got this very, sophisticated process that they follow to have all their clinicians. They've got about 100 and some clinicians there, to really use data to inform diagnosis, which, wild as it may seem, in mental health really does not happen across the board. If you see a psychiatrist, for the most part, they may be using like one or two rating scales. Like probably when you've been to the doctor, if you've taken like a PHQ-9, you'll go in and they'll ask you, over the last 2 weeks, how often have you
Yeah,
had,
never.
how often.
Always. Yep.
Yep, yep, exactly. So maybe you'll do a couple of those, but
Mhm.
nothing really comprehensive. So he kind of built this unique process. And we decided together this was something that like really was a need out there, and that we could actually build a product that could kind of take their process and make it usable by both individuals and practices. And so I think first step is really making sure that you have like a really good concept. And
Of like a
so
real life problem.
right,
Mhm.
exactly. And I do think a lot of people go into it now, having been in the product world for a while. It's really easy to get like really excited about new technology and about like kind of like fancy ways to do XYZ. But I think a lot of businesses start and they don't really validate that there's a real problem that needs to be solved. And
Right.
so that I think is kind of the hardest and like most easy step to miss when starting
Yeah.
something new. So I would definitely say making sure that there's something out there. I mean, we did a lot too to kind of validate that yes, other people would really like to use data in their practice or would really like to in their own life, have a better understanding of what's going on with their mental health so they could take something to a provider
Yeah.
to get a more clear picture. So I definitely think, hardest part starting something new, just validating that there's something there.
Right.
And then from there, talking to a lot of people, both to help you kind of like point out blind spots and, also to help potentially fill in the gaps when you need to hire and find people who do things better than you in certain areas.
For sure. So it's kind of like build researching, coming up with almost like a simple idea, but that has a need. And then you're like have the conversations and then kind of start building your team experts where you're not an
Exactly.
expert, I'm sure. Oh,
Exactly. And I mean,
oh,
there's no right way to do this. And there's like a million different kinds of businesses, right? Somebody
yeah.
may,
Yeah.
I know a lot of my friends have gone off and started like consulting.
Uh-huh.
And I think, that's kind of a more common path I'm seeing from the corporate world.
Yeah, me too.
And I think it's a little bit different, but I think for every business, it's probably, there's some degree of like, okay, what can I bring that maybe somebody else can't? Or what can I bring to the world that where there is like a real need?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's often kind of the hardest step in really figuring out how to kind of position yourself
For
um,
sure. For
to
sure.
people who might need it.
And for working moms or just anyone who's kind of on the fence, they've been in the corporate world and they're thinking about doing this, but it just kind of seems so overwhelming. Like, can you share maybe like a surprising thing in the journey, which is more positive and motivational, where you were like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that would kind of fall into place, and it did, and I may have like underestimated myself to be able to do this.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, like I'm a first time CEO and
Yeah.
I have, had a lot of experience in the product and technology world, but not in the, doing all of the things world. And I think it has been a really pleasant surprise to me to challenge myself to do things that I really have not done, building a financial plan for the business and talking with, talking with and kind of selling a board on what finances we need for XYZ. That's something that I really never thought I would do. And I think because I'm doing something that I really thought I would not be doing, it just makes it a little bit more. I'm more proud of those things that like I really just didn't know I kind of had in me. Same for sales. Like, as a founder, you end up doing all the things, right? And I actually I used to be like really, really shy as a kid. And I never, even in more recent jobs, I never really thought that I would love doing sales. And as a founder, you end up doing a lot of sales, a lot of selling. You're talking
Right.
to
Like
people every day
selling.
who need to kind of buy into you and buy into this concept. And I have found that I really love it. Like I'm really proud of myself because that's something that, an area that I've really needed to push myself. But it's also been shocking to me that it's kind of fun when you're selling something that you like really wholeheartedly believe in so much that is like a real passion of yours. So that's been a big surprise for me.
Right. No, that makes sense though. And then what about on the other side? Like, what if you had a chance to kind of go back and start from scratch? What is like one thing you may have done differently?
I think so, like career, like work wise, I really do think while therapy is helpful in this arena, I think as as women, a lot of times we're kind of like taught to defer to other people's perspectives. And
Mhm.
so I do think trusting myself more in getting started and even in like early kind of conversations about product direction and things like that. I think a lot of times I have the answers that I don't think I have. And
Right.
it's taken experience for me to learn that I actually do know in many cases. I kind of will like default to doing lots of research or sourcing opinions and I really do have more of that. I kind of know more than I think I do. So I think kind of starting with that confidence is something I wish I could do. On the other hand, I don't regret anything. I think that, I've learned so much from every experience that I've had and every mistake, lots of mistakes that I've
Yeah.
made along the
Yeah.
way.
That's awesome. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit. So now that we've got kind of background in your company, how you got there, I know you mentioned your husband works full time, long hours, even travel sometimes.
Yes.
So walk us through, you're a CEO, he works long hours. How do you guys manage the house while maintaining these high level careers? And what does childcare look like for you?
Yeah. So in some ways, I think it's kind of funny I'm being asked this because, like, I don't think anybody would. I know I mentioned this to you. I really don't think in my life I've never been called like neat or organized. Like, our house
Yeah.
is a little bit like, all over the place. So I will say it's true. We both are working a lot. I think a lot of it and like a lot of like what keeps me at peace is just kind of accepting that like something's going to go to crap. Like something's
Every
gonna
day.
either the
Yeah.
house, either their clothes or either, it's just, I think we need to have some level of like acceptance that like it is just really hard. It's hard to balance a demanding career with being a parent. So giving myself grace is something that I'm continuously like working on.
I so second that. My coming back from this leave, you always want to hit the ground running and be like, I'm
Yes.
going to come back better than ever. First week back, St. Louis got this random snowstorm. We never got shut down school. So we got three kids. My husband works.
It's
So that
a
week
lot.
was, scratch that. And then the
Yes.
second week we got hit with that infamous stomach flu going on. So I
Oh my
I
God.
so agree with you. It's just you have to like accept it's not going to ever be what almost you want it to be. It's never going to
Yes.
be perfect and you have to give yourself grace.
Yes, exactly. And I do think that having flexibility, like you're saying, like at work, having
Yeah, like
grace
working
from
from
work,
home has saved me
you can have grace for yourself, but then if work doesn't have grace, that's also really hard.
a
And
hundred
so
percent.
I think being in a place that, does afford that is like extremely grateful for that. And I'm like very aware of that privilege and I feel very, very lucky. But oh my gosh, the flu. Oh my gosh. That I do.
It's
I
so
truly
hard.
have such nightmares. But how do we make it work? I was kind of thinking before our call today, are there tips? Are there like actual tips? We we started, so my husband Jeff, he does travel a lot now. He didn't used to, and so like our demands kind of shifted a little bit. He actually used to have a job where he could take a little bit more time, help with pickup even sometimes, and that has changed in the last year or two, and we've kind of had to like renegotiate our things that we take care of in the house. And so when he travels, my latest trick is I don't know if your kids are like this in the morning, but like mornings are really hard. Like they're really,
Like
really
awful.
awful. Yes. Like it's just like if somebody witnessed, I don't know. But what I do, so Carmen, our 2-year-old, like hates getting dressed. And so one thing
If
that
he
I
does
do
this.
now is do you do this too? I get her dressed in her outfit for the next day, the night before, and it's kind of gross, probably.
Wait,
But
so you put her to bed in that
I
outfit.
do. I do.
Oh, I kind of love that because I thought I was ahead of the game by having them pick out. I
Oh
pick out the
no.
2-year-old, but the 4-year-old's like very into styling herself now.
Okay,
It would
okay.
take like an hour. So we do it the night before, which saves time. But I
Yes.
kind of love where you're
I
going
mean,
with that.
listen, like you do
That
what
saves like
works.
an hour.
Picking out, sometimes it's the picking out that helps. You just gotta like know your kid, right? But ours,
Yeah.
Yeah, we just
I love that actually.
made mornings like a million times easier. Um,
Yeah.
and then, I think it is just like a lot of communication about like who's going to be doing what and when. And we kind of have like settled into Jeff helps a lot more in the mornings. I'm not a morning person either. And he's able to like kind of get up and be there. And I kind of run the nighttime routine a little bit more. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just it is busy. And then, we're also like really fortunate to have good friends who are neighbors who will help out with like we do a lot of like carpooling back and forth to daycare, school, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was the other thing I was going to bring up. I know that you guys are in Chicago, you don't have immediate family there.
Yeah.
Whereas the reason we're in St. Louis is we're a 10-minute drive from my parents, which I mean, literally, I kid you not, on a weekly basis, they are helping out with childcare. So I was going to ask, like, where do you guys lean in? What is your village? But that's great. You guys are they neighbors like on the block where you guys can just kind of
Yes. Yeah.
knock on the door type relationship?
We're very lucky. And I think, being in Chicago without family, really nearby, we did kind of like lean heavily into the close friendships
Yeah.
that we have. And we live like we're very, very lucky. We live like a couple houses down from our really good friends. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's like kind of a knock on the door situation. And we do have it arranged where like we'll text in the morning being like, all right, we'll do drop off today. You guys, can you do it tomorrow? Jeff's out of town. Like it's kind of a good setup there. We're very lucky. And then I also am really lucky to have like I probably don't take advantage of this enough, but I have like a group of moms who go to my son's whose kids go to my son's school, and they're all just like very willing to help with drop-offs for birthdays and things like that. And it's but it's hard. It's like without family nearby.
You kind of create your own little family.
Exactly, exactly. You work hard to kind of figure out what's going to work. And you find that people are more, like what's been surprising to me is people are much more willing to help than I would have thought. And it's just, it kind of takes a lot for me to like ask for, out of the blue, like a ride, to somewhere. But usually people,
Same boat as you.
you
Yes.
too.
Yes, like one time we have next door neighbors who adore the girls, and we were both traveling for work and completely just slipped through the cracks. There was no one
Yeah.
to pick the girls up from school. I was, super embarrassed to reach out on this ask, and immediately, like, of course, that sounds like lovely. Figured out the car seat
Yes.
situation, but I so agree with you. People want to help. They
Yes.
typically, the kids are fun for them for a couple hours, and it's just like asking for the help.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think kind of the same goes interestingly for work. I'm really,
I love that. I'm going to ask for parallels. So
well, I
take
do
it
think it's
away.
it's true. Like I really don't I'm so lucky. I have an amazing team. I, have mentioned before, like, listen, this is going to be a week where it's going to be challenging for me. Jeff's out of town. This one's sick. I've got to do XYZ, and my team will step up and be like, how can we help? And it's just really amazing. I feel really fortunate to work with people who kind of have each other's backs in that way. And it's just always for some reason like a little bit surprising to me. I'm kind of like shocked when that happens. I don't know why.
I totally agree. And I feel like I mean, I'm in corporate, but my manager is so amazing. And you never even have to give an explanation.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's like, of course, what can I do? I just put it on her calendar. There's no questions. I think she already understands. I feel all the guilt, and she like trusts me that I will get the
Yes.
work done. And I
Yes.
feel like you have to be in that kind of setup if you are able to maintain both things.
Yes.
Or I think you would just fail ultimately.
I think so too. And I do think along those lines, like working in a place where there are a lot of moms, frankly,
Yeah. Yeah.
or working parents, I think can lead to, a lot of understanding.
I agree. I agree. Working parents on the leadership board, I think truly
Yeah.
trickles down.
Yes.
I
Yes.
couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, again, I think this was so fun. I feel like we got to hear your journey of both kind of working in startups, how you launched your company. Quick question, just because you do have such a interesting background, like coming from corporate, especially startups, which is its own animal. I worked for one once, I will never again. But it's great experience. But now that you're like a CEO, co-founder, how would you compare balancing? Again, you've got two young kids. How I'm sure there's pros and cons, but like how would you compare experiences owning something versus being an employee, let's say at a startup?
Yeah. I think, while my responsibilities are bigger, like
Hmm.
if this business doesn't work out, it's on me. There's a lot that's on me. If we can't figure out how to, grow, that's on me.
Yeah.
If the product doesn't, it's really like it is a lot of responsibility. But I think and hours. But I think with that, for me, just having the flexibility over my day and over my priorities, over the company's priorities, to me, that feels more free and more flexible than a job where I may be even working less hours, but I don't get to, have a say in the things that I'm, kind of doing
Investing in the
ongoing.
children.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
for me, I feel like very fortunate to feel very free. And part of that also is working with co-founders who have the same kind of who value also a life outside of work. I feel like I'm able to juggle and like be more present for my family when I am happy at work and whatever that means.
Totally agree with
It
you.
looks different for everybody, but I really, to me, it feels very fortunate to be able to be in this capacity.
Well, I'm just so excited for you. I feel like you're right. It's hard to follow your gut and you want something. It's missions in line with what you believe in. And you've got two little ones. So your plate is full, but it sounds like you're loving it.
I am. I feel very grateful. And thank you so much again for giving me the opportunity to
Yes.
share that. And I appreciate it.
Yes. No, thank you so much for your time and thank you all for joining us. Please tune in next time for more insights on how to balance career and family. I'm Sarah Sheridan, Director of Sales and Recruiting. And if you have any hiring needs, please contact me at the link below. Thanks.